Hey everybody, are you interested in looking at the distilling process and pairing that with key business knowledge such as finance, marketing, and operations? Then you should check out the online Distilled Spirits Business Certificate from the University of Louisville. It's an online program and can be completed in as little as 15 weeks. It's taught by both U of L business faculty and corporate fellows, so you're getting real experience from real experts at the most renowned distilleries, companies, and startups in the distilling industry. All that's required is a bachelor's degree. Go to uofl.me/pursue spirits.
There is no amount of money that is worth everything that you go through. There isn't. And I say that with extreme confidence. It's not worth it.
All right, everybody, it is episode 226 of Bourbon Pursuit, and we don't have a whole lot of bourbon news to kind of cover, so we'll just kind of give you some updates on what's been happening inside the ecosystem. And last week was what is considered the Great Buffalo Trace Barrel Frenzy. We talked about on the show with Bo Beckman of Buffalo Trace about how there are barrels that are allocated for the general public that can get access to them. And now, as you could imagine, there are thousands and thousands of people going after just a handful of barrels. And you knew it was going to be an intense few moments as soon as it went online. But there was a huge feeling of defeat felt across the entire bourbon landscape when people logged in, and within the matter of 1 second, every single barrel was gone. Yet, persistence paid off, and with the help of our Patreon community, Bourbon Pursuit was able to capture 2 Buffalo Trace barrels and a 1792 full proof. So we're looking forward to bringing those to our community in 2020. Now, speaking of barrel selections, we're out at Four Roses today selecting our final barrel from there for 2019. That's going to be 5 barrels from Four Roses this year, and we're always humbled and thankful for the opportunity to go and bring our Patreon community members along with us. So thanks to Four Roses for always being so accommodating and awesome, and a huge shout out to Keg and Bottle out of San Diego for being our retail partner who makes all this possible. Make sure you go and check them out online at kegandbottle.com. That's keg, the letter N, bottle.com, and you can get whiskey shipped right to your doorstep. And now for some quick history. November 4th celebrated the birth of Isaac Wolf Bernheim. Born in 1848, Bernheim was a Kentucky businessman who helped cement Louisville as a center for the bourbon industry. Today, Heaven Hill bears the name of this American whiskey pioneer on their Bernheim Original Wheat Whiskey, as well as on the Bernheim Distillery that's located in Louisville, Kentucky. All right, now on to today's podcast. To be fair, this isn't our usual lighthearted selves. In fact, it gets very intense very quickly. So if you're hoping to listen today and get a few laughs, I'm sure you're not really going to get any. But if you are a first-time listener, please go back and make sure you listen to some of our other episodes, because you'll get a feel about how our typical feeling and how we really run an episode is around here. But this episode is really here to serve a lesson for all those out there who dare to venture down this road. We all know that counterfeits exist, and it's actually really hard to tell a difference if they're good enough. And with the new vintage laws in Kentucky and even other states like Washington, D.C. that can buy bottles from consumers and sell them in retail stores, it means that even buying your bottles from retail stores isn't safe either. So if you're out there and you're looking for high-end bourbon and you're willing to drop a lot of money, you really need to look after yourself. I hope this podcast is kind of a wake-up call to a lot of the spirit producers out there that have highly allocated products on the market. Many enthusiasts believe that it's time to start implementing some form of anti-tampering mechanisms or something that can be done with the packaging to start preventing counterfeits. And this podcast should spark some of those conversations of not only what happens when you're caught up in some of these counterfeit rings, but what can you as a producer do to start protecting your consumers? If you're interested in other podcasts that we've released, they're all organized on our website by distillery, a Bourbon 101 series, and lots more. Go check it out at bourbonpursuit.com. Here's a quick message from Joe over at Barrel Bourbon, and then you've got Fred Minnick with Above the Char.
Hi, this is Joe Beatrice from Barrel Bourbon. I know I talk a lot about blending here, but we also have a national single barrel program. Ask your local retailer or bourbon club about selecting your own private barrel. Find out more at barrelbourbon.com.
I'm Fred Minnick, and this is Above the Char. The secondary market, as we once knew it, is gone. You can no longer go onto a Facebook group and actively trade or buy from someone 3 states away. There's no getting it back either. And let me tell you why. Because nearly every attorney general in the United States of America has band together to try and end the secondary market on eBay, Craigslist, Facebook, and other places. In a recent letter, a coalition of 46 state attorney generals asked companies in their respective states to review their current postings for online alcohol sales, asked them to remove illegal postings and develop programming on their own dime to block and prevent users from violating state alcohol laws. Now, here is a quote from the Attorney General for the state of Oklahoma, Mike Hunter. He says, "This isn't about violating state laws. It's about protecting the health and well-being of Oklahomans. Illegally sold alcohol thwart state licensing laws that ensure the substances aren't tainted and are coming from a reputable vendor. The substances being sold illegally could originate anywhere and could contain deadly substances like methanol. As we work with Facebook, Craigslist, and eBay to crack down on the issue, I am encouraging Oklahomans to use extreme caution when purchasing alcohol online." End quote. And notice that he used the word online versus secondary social media groups. Because let me tell you what this really is. This is a defense of the 3-tier system. This is the 3-tier system rising up and saying, we don't want online alcohol sales. You've seen the likes of Drizzly, Minibar, the Spirits Network, and other entities try and make this work. The entire world is moving to online sales, and yet alcohol wants to remain like it's in the 1950s. Now, I have no issues with walking into your local liquor store and buying something. But we have got to move forward into the future. This is no longer 1995, and this is the same group that took down the tobacco industry. And now they're trying to block any kind of online mechanism to sell alcohol. Now, what we had going in the secondary groups on Facebook, those were, let's say, developed for hobbyists. They don't want that either. So if you live in Maine or Vermont or one of these other states that you don't get a good allocation of bourbon, and you have a buddy in Kentucky or Texas that you want to work with to get a bottle, well, good luck, because the United States of America does not want you to have that. So think about that when you're going to vote for that next state election. Bring this up as an issue. See where they stand with alcohol shipping. Most states don't allow it. Most states don't want it because the distributors in those respective states want to keep the money in their nest egg. Now, I don't sell. I don't buy from people I don't know or liquor stores that I'm not familiar with. But that's not to say that I believe it should be illegal for someone in Hawaii or Maine or wherever to work with someone in Texas to buy a bottle they can't get in their respective state. But that's the future. The future is going back to the old guard, and these attorney generals are leading the charge, just like they did against the tobacco industry. Someone's got to stand up to them. Who's it going to be? Might as well be us. If you want alcohol shipping in your state, write your representative. If you want to see Amazon, Drizzly, or Minibar, or the Spirits Network to be able to succeed and to offer you a product that you cannot go and get in your local liquor store, then fight for it. Because that is the only way it's going to happen, and no one will listen to us unless you say something. So fight. And that's this week's Above the Char. Hey, if you have an idea for Above the Char, hit me up on Instagram or Twitter. And by the way, did you know I now have a YouTube channel? Look me up on YouTube. Search my name, Fred Minnick. Until next week, cheers.
Welcome back to the episode of Bourbon Pursuit, the official podcast of bourbon. Kenny, Ryan, and Fred together again today. You know, I usually open it up with something light and something airy, and today is a little bit different because this is something that has been a topic that has always been a worrisome issue inside of the bourbon market, inside of the high-end, really the high-end bourbon market, as well as, do you know what you're buying? You know, we all know that there's online forums, there's websites, there's all kinds of places to go and get allocated whiskey. However, you never ultimately know the source unless you're usually buying it directly from a retail, knowing that it got there on the day a delivery happened. It's even hard to even find from retailers nowadays. But when we start going down this path, we start looking at the counterfeit side. Is it out there? Does it happen? And of course it does. And that's the truth and the sad reality of what is out there. However, today's episode is really going to expand on that even more to kind of look at what is the harsh reality of somebody that does this and gets caught.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the bourbon community is all built on trust, you know, and like we've all had that. When you buy a bottle, like my wife thought I was absolutely crazy just buying random bottles from random people, you know, and it was built on trust. So it's, you know, that's something that we don't take lightly. And, you know, I'm hoping today will be an enlightenment and a deterrent, you know, from it happening again, but hopefully enlighten some people too, to know what's out there and just, you know, be on your guard for it as well.
And our guest has informed us that he is under legal scrutiny. And I think a lot of people listening would think you should be in jail. People who commit these kinds of frauds in wine are spending up to 30 years in jail right now. So I don't know what the status of your legal problems are, but, you know, the fact you're sitting with us tells me that you care enough to sit down with us. But I want to tell you something. We don't feel sorry for you. No one's going to feel sorry for you. Most people listening are going to want you to be in jail. And the only reason why you're on here, the only reason why I agreed with Kenny and Ryan to have you on here was so that we could possibly prevent this from happening again. And I look at this as it was kind of we discussed previously, like this is the ex-con coming to 6th grade telling us to not steal a car because you'll end up like me. So that's what I have to say.
Absolutely. And so we're going to keep everything anonymous as much as we can because of the severity of the situation, and we don't want to implicate any parties involved. So we're going to be referring to the person that's joining us today as John, about as generic as I can get. So John, thank you so much for joining us today, giving us a little glimpse into really where this happened and kind of and how it sort of spiraled out of control. So kind of talk about first your introduction into like the bourbon market. Was it something that you saw as you actually enjoyed bourbon, or was it something that you saw as opportunity for business, as in like a flipping game or something like that?
Well, I do enjoy bourbon, and when I got involved in the groups, it was on a very low scale, but it ended up to where I was selling quite a bit more bottles, so it ended up being more of a business type. Not a business where as I quit my other jobs or anything, but it was a strong hobby to where, you know, I enjoyed, you know, buying and selling bourbon. So, and I kept up with it quite a bit. So it led from me liking it to, the longer I got into it, me selling more and more bottles.
Yeah. It was kind of like is it like a drug or a habit that you can't quit? Like, it's an easy way to, don't get me wrong, like a lot of people flip bottles and they go and do it. You get a Weller 12 at $40, you sell it for 140. It's an easy Benjamin.
I would say that's a very good way to put it. Truthfully, it really is.
Yeah. And I guess if you can scale the operation, it makes sense too. So kind of talk about the next evolution of it. I mean, was it the ability that, you know, that because you were in these groups for a while, so you kind of understood the dynamic of how the bourbon in the secondary, in the gray market really works. And what was the kind of the phase that took it to that next step, where you started looking at, okay, maybe I could actually counterfeit stuff?
I guess maybe for some people that it could be easily done, and that's the problem with it. Is some of these bottles it can be easily done, and that's what really, I guess, started. I was like, oh gosh, this is so easy. No one will ever know, and that's what kind of started really right then and there.
What were some of the things that you thought made it really easy? Just like how the products are labeled or sealed, or
yes, the sealing.
Gotcha.
Correct, exactly. And not on all bottles, just on certain ones particularly.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Why aren't you in jail?
That's a good question. I guess I don't really have an answer for that exactly on why I'm not. I'm not saying I shouldn't be.
Did you turn yourself in? Did you speak with cops?
No, I've never spoken with cops. Mm.
So when you were caught, who you were caught by someone within the community?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
But I mean, that's kind of normal that we've seen. I mean, this is there's teams of people out there that do they take inventory of Van Winkle lot numbers on Pappy 23s. They look at inventory of those things, and I guess kind of talk about the day or the progression that happened when you got caught. Do you remember what that looked like, or how the I guess you could say that the chips started falling?
There was a couple bottles in a row, I think, that looked suspicious that led back to me, and that raised some concern. And that's how it all started. That's when they started, I guess, maybe investigating as far as like previous sales of mine. Now, I sold, quite a bit of bottles in the past. And of course, the problem with that is that any bottle that I ever sold, that raised concern as to where all the bottles I sold, were fraudulent.
So when you were caught,
Yes.
did it become public in our communities?
Yes.
At that point, why did you not turn yourself in to the authorities?
I guess I was just trying to stay as low-key as possible. I was a nervous wreck at the time. First time I've ever really been in trouble. I really didn't know what to do, I mean, I really didn't. I was at a total loss as to what to do. I was kind of honestly taking a lot of the people's advice that caught me, and I'll be honest, they guided me through it a lot.
So the people who caught you helped you?
Yes. Well, because I helped me, and also because I did refund money, to the people that got fraudulent bottles. So, and I went through each bottle with them and told them which ones were and which ones weren't.
Do you think it was an immediate feeling of remorse, or was it like, I just feel really bad that I got caught? At least when it first started. Like, I know we can progress until today because it's been years since then. But when the days first started, when the messages started coming, the emails started coming, I mean, was it kind of like everything's starting to really kind of spiral out of control at that point?
Oh yes, very quickly it started spiraling out of control. Yes, without a doubt, it did. So,
talk about some of the effects that you kind of saw on the very first days, because we all know that online communities they're very bullyish, right? I mean, that's just the nature of what it is. Anybody can hide behind a keyboard and say a lot of stuff, and at the same exact time, people can do damage to online reputations very, very quickly. So kind of talk about what that process was when it first started.
Well, the amount of messages that I received, threatening messages, whether their bottles were real or not, was unbelievable. I mean, I received tons of messages. And actually, a lot of the people that were doing, believe it or not, the most complaining and threats or people that I never even sold from in the past. Because I guess you're kind of stealing from like a community, not just one person. It's the whole community that goes out after you. And so it didn't matter if I had sold to them or not. I was getting, whether it be threats, messages, phone calls, whatever have you, from everybody groups. I mean,
I mean, you essentially took what was this beautiful hobby and something that we all enjoyed, and you took advantage of people. You took advantage of people. So I mean, in this day and age, of course, you're going to get a lot of commentary from people who didn't.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, what did you expect?
I did expect it, because I had so many bottles in the past. Now, again, I didn't really know totally what to expect, but I figured I'd be getting quite a few messages. I didn't know to what degree, and it came in at a larger degree than I had thought, to be honest with you. But again, I didn't know exactly what to expect. I just didn't.
Do you remember the amount or the quantity of kind of counterfeit bottles that you had created?
The exact amount?
I mean, not the exact amount, but I mean, some sort of roundabout number.
It was probably around 34, 35, something like that. But the amount of inquiries that I got were well over 200 to 300.
Because how long had you been selling? How long had you
Easily.
been selling before the counterfeits?
Oh, at least 2, maybe 3 years.
And so you kind of built.
I would say 2 to 3 years.
Built up a level of trust with buyers and
That's correct.
within the community.
That's correct. Yes, and that was the hardest thing for me.
Yeah.
It really was.
Even if you sold one fake bottle, 200 messages is nothing.
Exactly. And I mean, all it takes is one. All it takes is one for you to destroy the trust, And I mean, it can be 10, 20, 100, but I mean, if it's just that one, it doesn't matter. You've broken all that trust.
Yeah.
So it's not even worth doing one. It's not, because it goes back to what I said. Then every other bottle you sell, people are going to raise a red flag, rightfully so, as to whether the bottle was real or not. So
I think one thing our listeners be interested in, was it ever a Van Winkle bottle that you ever counterfeited?
no. I never did like the high end bottles, like 2 to 3. No, never.
You figure, like, I'm just trying to think of it from the mind aspect you might have gone through, that you stick in somewhere like in the middle of the road, something with like clear parafilm or clear things that are easy
the
to
average
do.
bottle was like, maybe 300, 400 would be the average, but I never did the high end stuff. So
I'm with you on that. Okay. So I guess let's kind of progress it on a little bit now. We've harped on a little bit of kind of where it started, and the days that it started happening. Kind of talk about in a few of the weeks following from there, because when news surfaces something like this, it immediately becomes a huge issue within inside of the community, and people are always talking about it. And I'm assuming that in the weeks following, there were more inquiries, more emails. Kind of also talk about not only just the emails and inquiries, but like damage caused to like anything else that was surrounded by you, whether it's family or anything like that. Kind of talk about the short-term impact that happened.
Well, I mean, my business suffered absolutely tremendously from it. My family received threatening phone calls. The office that I worked at, they received threatening phone calls, because obviously in this day and age, you can Google someone and find out pretty much anyone about them. So,
What's a threatening phone call? What did they say?
I had some people threatening, to come down and to beat my ass. My wife received many threatening calls as well, messages as well. My offices did the same thing, and that went on for quite some time, and that was very difficult. Because I wasn't the only one affected at that point. It was the people that surrounded me, not just family, but even friends.
What was it like facing your family, having them know that what you had done?
I was the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
The hardest thing I've ever done. And I would never want to go through that again.
Are you still with your wife?
I am. Luckily, she stood by my side, and I'm very fortunate for that. Yes, I am. It caused problems. The business suffered tremendously. It really did. And the bad thing is, it wasn't just for me. It was for other people that I worked with, and that was the hardest thing, because they weren't involved in this whatsoever. And that was very difficult, very difficult.
So beyond that, we talked about a business suffering. Businesses, they... a family can build something and it could be generational. However, sometimes, you can rebuild a business. Kind of talk about your family at this point. As Ryan kind of alluded to, it must have been hard to face them, but what was their initial reaction? What was their thought process of like, how do we remedy this situation? What kind of advice did they give you?
Well, first of all, to come clean, admit what I did, and to try to remediate as best as possible by coming clean and by coming forward and paying back anybody that received a defrauded bottle, which I did. You know, and that took some time to go through everything because we went through each individual one, and that's the process that we started with. So
was everybody defrauded, like 100% paid in full, kind of?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, but they received so many inquiries because you know there were other bottles that I sold that that weren't legitimate, but people were still asking, and rightfully so. So,
Do you understand how it's difficult to believe that you refunded 100%?
I do. Yes, I do.
Because we have no way to validate that.
What they did was they went through eBay, where I got the bottles, and they went through all the accounts, and we went through each bottle individually from them on what I purchased.
So eBay was the
right.
point where you were able to get these bottles.
Full access to my accounts. I gave them my passwords and everything.
So was eBay your only source of acquiring empty bottles?
Yes, it was.
So I guess that kind of always goes back to the message we always say to never sell empty bottles on eBay because this is the reality.
That's another thing I did too. Any open bottles that I had, I took a video and broke every single one of them, which was quite a few. And I went and took a video and broke them all. So
after you were caught,
that's correct. Yes, afterwards.
So what would you say to someone like for them to check their purchases, like what are some like easy signs that someone can like tell a fake, not just from tracing it back to an eBay sale, but maybe like if they're looking at seals or anything, like what's some signs that like something's fishy? Or
I would say maybe the color would be one. The color of the bourbon, see if it matches, would probably be the best thing because some of them, it would be hard to tell on the seals. It just really would be. But the color would be the number one thing that I would say. And without tasting it, I'm saying.
Ryan, I've spotted a lot of fakes in my career. In fact, I validate a lot of older bottles, and unfortunately, John is not a good person to ask how to spot a fake, because as soon as he's the guy who has been counterfeiting, and as soon as that heats out his words out there on the street of like how you spot it, the other ones try and fix it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with counterfeiting. It's a fucking virus. You were Bourbon Fraud 1.0. Now we're a Bourbon Fraud 3.0. And like what you were doing, it's completely discounted now to like how to catch something. Because everyone's done it. But you did it. And I still have not felt the remorse. I hear that like this happened and that happened. I hear a lot of regrets, but you took away a community's innocence in a lot of ways. I mean, sure, we could have all assumed that this stuff was happening, but you did it. And I still don't feel like I hear the remorse from you.
The hardest thing for me was I built up a lot of trust and all that within those groups. And it killed me knowing that I broke that, because I built up a lot of good friendships and things. And it was very hard for me to deal with that on a purpose, because I do care about people. That doesn't show that, but I mean, I'm saying to break all that and all the friendships was very hard for me. I mean, it really was. I mean, and that was one of the most difficult things that I went through, is because of just people look at you obviously, differently, and I hated that. Because I do care about what people think, probably too much. But I mean, I do care about my image and what people think about me. And I hated that I broke all that trust with the people that I had worked with and sold for so long. Whether they received a fraudulent bottle or not, it doesn't matter, because I was still at that viewed. So,
what did you refill with?
Weller mainly.
You were refilling with Weller.
That's correct.
That's not what I was expecting to hear. I was expecting to hear something like Kentucky Tavern or something.
No, it was the Weller, not the 108, but the
The special reserve.
Yes, that's the special reserve. Yes.
Yeah. So I guess let's keep on going down. I know Fred wants to really feel the remorse here, but I kind of want to keep going down this path of. So we've touched on the weeks afterwards. Let's touch on 1 year after. Usually anything that happens in these communities, it's breaking news for about a week, and then after that, the dust settles, and we wait for the next big thing to happen. That's just typically the cycle, the ebb and flow of what happens. So a year later, sort of, where's your head at? Where's your business? Like, is it still down? I mean, is it still in a rebuilding phase? Like, what sort of consequences we're still feeling?
Absolutely still in a rebuilding phase, that's for sure. And I mean, still if I go out, I'll always have, I feel like that perception is, oh, he's the guy that defrauded people, whatever. And there's no way of me, there's nothing.
You feel like you're permanently tagged with that now?
Permanently, yeah. And I don't think there's anything I can do about that, unfortunately. And I understand that. I understand why, because I broke that trust, and that trust probably can never be regained. And I understand that, and that's very difficult for me. So, and it's hard. Honestly, it's hard to live with. I mean, it really is. It's hard for me to live with. Yeah. There's not a day goes by where I haven't thought about it. And I mean that when I say that. There isn't a day gone by. There isn't a day gone by where I haven't thought about it.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine it has to be tough. It has to be tough trying to go through this and trying to...
it's not worth it. It's not
even establish new race. I mean, and you're in a city, Ryan. We talk about it all the time. It's a big little town. Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not worth it. The amount that you suffer, the amount that you lose, the amount that the people that are suffered that are closest to you, it doesn't even come close. It doesn't even come close.
I have some additional questions I want to ask you.
Okay.
Did you ever talk to any other counterfeiters?
No.
At the time you were doing it, was it fun?
I wouldn't classify it as fun. No, I would not classify it as fun.
How would you classify it?
I would classify it as greed. That's what I would
classify. Just wanted more money.
That's what I would classify it as.
But
never was it fun. When
we go down that greed path, I guess this is how all criminals get caught is they think it's too easy. Was that your process or thinking of?
Well, first of all, he's not a criminal because he has not been. He's evaded any. He just admitted that he's never talked to the cops or anything. He committed a crime, but that's a different story. But
again,
go ahead. But I just want to be very clear here. You could always turn yourself in for what you did.
All right.
You can always do that. We've agreed to not, keep this anonymous. But, when you first reached out to us, I had this big, long email about how to make up for it. And it started with turning yourself in. But to me, that's kind of where a lot of the conversation starts.
I'll say.
So what led to that, I guess, greed? Like in needing, or did you need the money or are you just wanting the money or?
There are more craft distilleries popping up around the country now more than ever. So how do you find out the best stories and the best flavors? Well, Rack House Whiskey Club, it's a Whiskey of the Month club, and they are on a mission to uncover the best flavors and stories that craft distilleries across the U.S. have to offer. Rack House's box ship out every 2 months to 40 states. In Rack House's October box, they're featuring a distillery with an interesting ingredient: water from the Bull Run watershed that has been protected by Congress since the 1870s. Rack House Whiskey Club is shipping out 2 bottles for the Bull Run Distilling Company out of Portland, Oregon, including a Pinot Noir finished American whiskey. Go to rackhousewhiskeyclub.com to check it out and try some for yourself. Use code PURSUIT for $25 off your first box. 291 Colorado Whiskey aims to create a one-of-a-kind, bold, and beautiful Colorado whiskey. Rugged, refined, rebellious. Distillery 291 is an award-winning, small-batch whiskey distillery located in Colorado Springs, Colorado, nestled in the shadow of Pikes Peak. Owner and founding distiller Michael Myers grew up on the family farms in Georgia and Tennessee, across the countryside defined by rolling hills, horses, and whiskey. He set out to create a flagship whiskey that evoked the Wild West, a cowboy walking to a bar saying, "Give me a whiskey," and the bartender slamming down a bottle of $291 Colorado whiskey. Find a bottle near you at 291coloradowhiskey.com. Ride it like you stole it, drink it like you own it. Live fast, drink responsibly.
So what led to that, I guess, greed, like in needing, or was it, did you need the money or are you just wanting the money or?
I needed the money for a habit that I developed, I guess.
Yeah.
So I guess I could put it that way.
What was the habit?
An addiction habit. That's what it was.
So you weren't like in clear thinking, clear mind.
No, it was an addiction habit. That's what it was. And no, I wasn't in a clear mind at all. My only thoughts were that addiction. I mean, and that's the only thing that at that time, that was my only thing on my mind. I didn't even care about the consequence, nothing. It was all about the addiction. That's what it was. That's how it started.
And so have you been clean? Have you been sobering up? Or?
Oh, yes. I mean, I help kids now with it and everything.
Was that getting caught the catalyst to kind of do that? Or
yes.
Was that the... Okay.
Yeah, it was. And I feel so much better now. I mean, that's why I try to give back by helping kids and all that. And that's been helpful to me myself to do that, you know. Mm-hmm. Because now that I've been through it, I know what it's like. And that was very hard within itself. Honestly, the hardest thing I've ever been through. To be honest with you, it really was.
Yep. And so, you had reached out to us about, helping you in regards of something that we had. And, we obliged because Ryan was looking at this as an opportunity for giving people, opportunities of second chances and everything like that. Mm-hmm. And then, this is kind of how we came here to kind of talk about this and have this sort of post-mortem of really how your life can almost become actually devastated and ruined by doing this, by just a little bit of greed, by thinking it's too easy and just continually going down that path. So we're now a little bit for like a few years removed now. Are there still impacts that you're still seeing, or is it started to kind of fizzle down now a little bit, and you're able to start moving on?
Slowly fizzle down. It's been a slow process, but I mean, it's taken quite some time. And even a few years past, it's taken quite some time. The effects are still there. Are they were as great as they were a couple of years ago? No, but they're still there. So,
and
they probably always will be. I mean, really, they probably always will be. And that's something that people got to think about that probably aren't when they're doing it, is that it doesn't just affect you in the short run, it affects you in the long run too. And it doesn't just affect you.
Talk about a little bit like your parents or your other family members that when this was, even years later, have they been able to look past it, or are they still kind of holding that in the back of their head?
Honestly, my family has grown to look past it now that I've gotten help and everything, and the way I handled it. I mean, they still were very upset. I'm not trying to say they weren't, because they were, but they've grown to look past it and kind of like a second chance kind of thing, even though they were affected.
How much whiskey did you sell? How much revenue did you make?
You mean in profit or gross?
Gross.
In a year or?
Year total, whatever.
The gross was maybe, let's just say 75.
75,000?
Now, it's not the net. Obviously, there's a big difference there, know. But I would say that would be the gross.
So that's for a lot of people, that's a year's wage.
Now, the net is much smaller than that, but yeah, that is the gross.
Sure.
So, as we kind of start looking at wrapping this up a little bit, I kind of want to also talk about, because you're a family man.
I am.
You have kids as well. You want to kind of try to anonymize a story a little bit and kind of look at, and this was kind of like the breaking point as well, at least where we got involved, of really how this started affecting even your children's lives.
Yeah, and that was one of the toughest things. During assignment, the kids, they had to look up, Google their parents' name. And, during that, the classmates, were all there, and then they saw my son and my name as well, too. And he received a very hard time from it. And when that was, just crushed me. I mean, it just crushed me. Because obviously he didn't have nothing, what to do with this whatsoever. And to see your son being affected, who's young, I mean, it was very hard. That's the hardest thing there is, really.
Did you explain to him what happened, or like?
Not to the fullest degree, no.
Right.
No, I did not. He's too young, I believe.
Sure.
So.
Sure.
You think one day he'll find out?
Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably. And that's the day I'll have to sit down and have a talk with him, which will be a very hard talk. I mean, it'll be a teaching lesson, but it'll still be a very hard talk. Because it's something I'm very ashamed of, I mean, I'm not proud of this. I'm extremely ashamed of it. I mean, you can't go back in time, but obviously, this is one of these things where, God, I wish you could.
Mm-hmm. So as we kind of finish this up, kind of give people one last sort of message on, if you think that you're going to go on this path and you can, we're all bourbon enthusiasts here. We know what bottles look like. You had already talked about being able to acquire some of these bottles, and most of them, if it's just cheap plastic stuff that goes over top of it, you can get a hair dryer, you can get a blow gun or heat gun, and you can shrink wrap stuff pretty easily. Talk about, if people that are out there thinking about it, even just remotely thinking about it, like what's the end state of where this is going to go?
Well, the people thinking about it, one, you're not just defrauding that one person, you're defrauding the whole entire group, for one. So you're not just going to have one person upset. You're going to have a whole entire group coming out after you. And on top of that, there's so many things that can be damaged with your business, your family, your coworkers, and things like that. And there is no amount of money that is worth everything that you go through. There isn't. And I say that with extreme confidence. It's not worth it. It's not worth it whatsoever. Not even the first bottle, because that's all it takes is one. That's all it takes. And from someone that's done it, I mean, I just assure you, whoever's thinking about doing it's the last thing you want to do. It's the last thing you want to do. The repercussions are unbelievable. And it's extremely hard, even years after it is. So, not just from a business point, but I mean, friendships, I mean, it's hard all the way around. It really is. So, it's not worth the money.
Mm-hmm. And I guess one thing I forgot to ask, speaking with friendships, I'm sure you had friends outside of bourbon and stuff like that too. What was the reality of the situation when they came to find out about stuff like this?
Oh, they were shocked because they never saw that coming from me,
I actually have a good friend who grew up with you.
Really? Mm.
And he couldn't believe it.
And that's,
And I'll say this.
That was very difficult too.
I'll say this. You said it's not worth the money. Well, what if you didn't get caught?
What if you didn't get caught?
What if you didn't get caught? And suddenly it's not 75,000, it's $100,000, and it's 200,000, and now you can buy something else. What if you didn't get caught? Would it have been worth the money then?
In my situation, if I wouldn't have been caught, I don't know if I'd be here today. And I really don't. Because that's how bad of a problem I had. So that's what I can say with my personal self, that I really don't think I would have been. So this was almost a blessing that I did, as weird as that sounds, but I'm just being honest with you. It really was. Because I wouldn't have stopped that addiction thing. it would have had to have taken something like this for me too, because that's how powerful it is. So with my situation, that's what I can say with that.
I understand, but I hope you can also understand that myself and probably thousands of listeners don't feel sorry for you. Like I said from the top,
and I understand that, and I don't blame them, and I completely understand that.
there's a lot of people who try to use their addiction or whatever happened to them as excuses for what they did, and I've seen that time and time again. And the fact is, what do you look like in 5, 10, 15 years, John, when the heat's off you? What do you look like then? Are you maybe getting back in the game? Are you going to maybe try to counterfeit again? You say no now, but...
No, there's no way I would ever even remotely consider getting this again. And I mean, that not even remotely. I mean, I will never sell a legitimate nothing, a bottle of bourbon again. I don't want anything to do with bourbon after this. And I mean that. And I mean, it's been a few years, and I haven't, and you won't see it in the few years before. There's, I can say with all the confidence in the world, I don't want to go through anything like this again.
I'm going to hold
not
you to
even
that.
legitimately, not even legitimately. I don't want to be involved in it at all.
I'm going to hold you to that. Because,
Please do.
Because like and for me, this is like where the agreement for anonymity would end. Is like if you're caught selling counterfeits again. Because
I don't blame you. I mean,
how people are, human nature is, they got away with something, they got paid or whatever, the heat's on them, goes away, and then they come back to it.
with
That's
me, I mean,
human nature.
I mean, you'll notice that, I guess, in the years to come, I guess is all I can say, but there's no question about it. With what I've been through, it doesn't even cross my mind. There's other ways you can make money. And there's other ways you can make money. And that's the last thing I'm going to do. I mean, it's not even consideration. There's no way. And I mean legitimately as well, too. I don't want no sales whatsoever with me. I haven't done it yet, and you will not see me do it in the future. And you know what? If you ever were to, which you won't, destroy me, But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Well, I know one person around here that'll keep you honest.
Please keep up. I mean,
Yeah. So, John, I do want to say thank you again for, having the courage to come on. I know this is not easy. It's definitely not easy, and it's definitely not easy to put in a position like this. However, our real goal with today was to help not only just bring a story that's never been heard before, but also to give other people the opportunity to understand what is the real ramifications of this type of activity, and when a community can really come down on you and really destroy not only just a reputation, but your family life and everything that comes in. It's not just a week; it's a lifetime, and that's really what it boils down to.
No, I want to go to this. Can you keep saying like the community did not destroy the choices? And I hope you agree with this. The choices you made destroyed your reputation and your relationships.
I agree. That's right.
The community did not do that.
Right, you're exactly right.
Your choices.
You're exactly right. It was only me. You're 100% correct. And I appreciate you having me on it. And I hope I could at least convince a couple people out there, that don't even think about it. So I really do.
Well, again, thank you, at least from our side, to say telling your story. I think it's, again, valuable for people out there just to know it. And then really, as I said, what the ramifications are. So if you want to learn more about Bourbon Pursuit, what we're doing next, what are the hot topics we're hitting on, make sure you follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, as well as Fred Minnick, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You've got the curation desk, you've got Patreon, you've got YouTube.
For all the lighter subjects.
All the lighter subjects, a little bit lighter and airier usually. Yes, this is a very serious subject today, and I
just wanted to say, I mean, Fred, I totally get where you're coming from, because it is a trust community, and the trust has been broken. And I'm, and maybe I'm taking advantage of, but I do believe in redemption. And I will just say, you only get one chance, and don't screw it up. And Fred, one of the remorse, I can see the pain, and I can feel it. I feel the tension. So and especially when dealing with families. So people that are thinking about it, I can tell you that this man's been through some emotional stuff with people, and I hope that never happens again with anyone or you. And I'm glad we got Fred to keep you in check. So
And Fred, I respect all your questions. I agree with what you said, seriously. So I really do.
Well, I am. I've been around a bit, and I've seen a lot of people say things and then repeat their actions in the past.
I could understand that.
Yep. Words are easy for sure.
I do. I definitely do believe in like the forgive and forget, but to me, that's not just like a given.
Sure.
To me, that's you got to earn it.
I agree.
For sure.
And for me, this is a really nice first step for you earning that from me and perhaps other people in the community. And I would say, a next step could be, speaking to local authorities, because whether you end up doing time for this, or you enter a plea deal in which you help spot fakes or something in the community, because fakes are rampant in the entire industry. You can't walk through a major city without seeing a fake Pappy Van Winkle on display in a bar. There are bars all the time refilling their stuff. And you know something? Most of the people who are in charge of like going around and making sure that the taxes are paid and people aren't serving underage, they don't care about that stuff. But that stuff is defrauding our community as much as you are. And for me, if you want that sweet redemption, if you want to be forgiven, if you want people to forget about it, you got to do something to get the community, to support the community. Because right now the bourbon community is hanging on by a thread with a lot of these fakes. Again, I said you were 1.0. There's been numerous since. A lot of them are stealing straight from the distillery. And at the end of the day, I genuinely am coming to the point where I will not buy certain bottles unless I can validate them all the way to the original purchase. That's where I am right now, because I know how bad it is in the market. And it all unfortunately started with you. And so you take on more of an anger, more of a grievance from me than I think if you were like the fourth or fifth guy.
And I respect that, and I understand where you're coming from. I can't argue that. I mean, I respect that.
I'm glad you do. And I hope you consider my step 2 very seriously.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Ryan, you want to close it out?
We'll see you next time.
Yeah, the tension was tight in there. So yeah, honestly, it was.
Yeah, I'm not the best host for these types.
Me neither. I usually like to keep it light and airy. That's we got.
But no, it is definitely a serious subject. And
Yeah.
Fred, I'm glad you could ask the tough questions, because I'm not so tough.
It's okay. Somebody here is keep us real. But then again, thank you for everybody that was able to make it here today to be able to talk about this, all of the team involved, and make sure that you stick around, listen to Bourbon Pursuit next week, because we've always got new fun topics. So with that, we'll see you all next week. Cheers.
Cheers.